just quickly.
Sorry, I was recording it on the wrong thing. My name is Summer and I am a alcoholic, and welcome to our study tonight. This is The Spiritual Life is Not a Theory, Friday night, Big Book Compendium, Big Book Study. I have Kevin O here with me, and we are on page XVII at the bottom, with the last paragraph where it says with the appearance. And I'm going to start to do some reading, and then I'll stop and we'll hear from Kevin and we'll see how everything goes. All right. With the appearance of the new book, a great deal began to happen. Dr. Harry Emerson Fosdick, the noted clergyman, reviewed it with approval. In the fall of 1939, Fulton Osler, then editor of Liberty, printed a piece in his magazine called Alcoholics and God. This brought a rush of 800 frantic inquiries into the little New York office, which meanwhile had been established. Each inquiry was painstakingly answered. Pamphlets and books were sent out. Businessmen traveling out of existing groups were referred to these prospective newcomers. New groups started up, and it was found, to the astonishment of everyone, that AA's message could be transmitted in the mail as well as by word of mouth. By the end of 1939, it was estimated that 800 alcoholics were on their way to recovery. All right, Kevin, do you have a comment?
No, not yet. Please continue on, Summer.
Okay. In the spring of 1940, John D. Rockefeller Jr. gave a dinner for many of his friends, to which he invited AA members to tell their stories. News of this got on the world wires. Inquiries poured in and again, and many people went to the bookstores to get the book, Alcoholics Anonymous. By March 1941, the membership had shot up to 2,000. Then Jack Alexander wrote a feature article in the Saturday Evening Post and placed such a compelling picture of AA before the general public that alcoholics in need of help really deluged us. By the close of 1941, AA numbered 8,000 members. The mushrooming process was in full swing. AA had become a national institution.
I guess one of the things I'll say is, they make it here, they make it sound here like there was this astronomical growth in Alcoholics Anonymous, and that's not really the case. Alcoholics Anonymous really grew quite slowly. If you compare it to a very comparable society that existed in the 1800s called the Washingtonians. And if you study the history of the Washingtonians, they were a group of people who got together to prevent themselves from drinking, and they were people who kept themselves sober. They grew much, much faster than Alcoholics Anonymous grew. They had, within a period of months to a year, they had like 100,000 members worldwide. And that was really before even telephones or anything like that. I mean, it was really, really word of mouth growth. And the Washingtonians grew very, very quickly compared to Alcoholics Anonymous. Where the Washingtonians fell short is in their singleness of purpose. They did not have a singleness of purpose like Alcoholics Anonymous has. And that's why we're so singularly focused on a solution for alcoholism and nothing else here in AA. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and to carry the message to the alcoholic that still suffers, and nothing else. The Washingtonians began to get involved in politics, and they started to get involved in prohibition movement, and they started to get involved in the slavery movement, and so on and so forth. And that's why Alcoholics Anonymous has learned to have no opinion on outside issues, because we use the Washingtonians as an analog to see how quickly we got ripped apart when they started to get divided by other issues. So anyway, I just mentioned that to say it does sound like we grew very quickly. Like within 5 years, we had 800 alcoholics and 8,000, or rather 8,000 alcoholics. And it sounds like it grew very quickly. We didn't grow anywhere near as quickly as the Washingtonians. Another thing that I like to point out that I've learned is that this Jack Alexander article that he wrote about Alcoholics Anonymous for the Saturday Evening Post was really a watershed moment for Alcoholics Anonymous. And you can go online, you can Google it. It's quite easy to find Jack Alexander, note about Alcoholics Anonymous. Yeah. And it's a really interesting story. But the backstory behind it that I find fascinating is that Jack Alexander built his career on exposing frauds. and exposing scams. And he did a lot of work prior to the work he did in AA. He wrote an article about the Philadelphia Labor Union and how they were tied to organized crime and so on and so forth. And he really blew it apart. After he finished that story, his editor came to him and said, you know, we've heard about this thing called Alcoholics Anonymous. There's got to be some kind of angle here. These people, these nonprofit people who are just trying to keep each other sober, there's got to be something wrong here. We want you to go in and infiltrate and see what is their scam? What is the deal in Alcoholics Anonymous? What are they trying to sell? And try to figure that out. And Jack Alexander came and he spent time with us, and we were open to him. Hey, Steve, how you doing, buddy? And we kind of opened the books to Jack Alexander, and he discovered that we are exactly who and what we say we are, and that we are the real deal and we're the real McCoy. And there was no scam for him to find out. There was nothing to expose. And he wrote a very, very favorable article about Alcoholics Anonymous. I think that's always an interesting piece of history and something that I'm very proud of, that you know, as Dr. Silkworth says, you can rely on absolutely anything we say about ourselves. Back to you, Summer.
Thank you. All right, we're moving on. Our society then entered a fearsome and exciting adolescent period. The test that it faced was this: could these large numbers of erstwhile erratic alcoholics successfully meet and work together? Would there be quarrels over membership, leadership, and money? Would there be strivings for power and prestige? Would there be schisms which would split AA apart? Soon AA was beset by these very problems on every side and in every group. But out of this frightening and at first disrupting experience, the conviction grew that AAs had to hang together or die separately. We had to unify our fellowship or pass off the scene.
You can keep reading, Sarah. Let's read all the way through to the next two paragraphs, and then we'll talk a little bit about the 12 traditions.
Okay. As we discovered the principles by which the individual alcoholic could live, so we had to evolve principles by which the AA groups and AA as a whole could survive and function effectively. It was thought that no alcoholic man or woman could be excluded from our society, that our leaders might serve but never govern, that each group was to be autonomous and there was to be no professional class of therapy. There were to be no fees or dues. Our expenses were to be met by our own voluntary contributions. There was to be the least possible organization, even in our service centers. Our public relations were to be based upon attraction rather than promotion. It was decided that all members ought to be anonymous at the level of press, radio, TV, and films. And in no circumstances should we give endorsements, make alliances, or enter public controversies. This was the substance of AA's 12 traditions, which are stated in full on page 561 of this book. Though none of these principles had the force of rules or laws, they had become so widely accepted by 1950 that they were confirmed by our first international conference held at Cleveland. Today, the remarkable unity of AA is one of the greatest assets that our society has.
So a lot of the 12 traditions are really born out of like mistakes that Alcoholics Anonymous made, and a lot of hard-learned lessons. And what was really happening in the 1940s, you know, AA starts in 1935, big book goes out in the world in 1939, a little group starting all over North America, really, if not the world, in the 1940s. And Bill Wilson is sitting at his desk in New York, and he's getting reports from all these different groups that people are going in different directions. They're trying different things, and they're starting to fracture a little bit. And he's very concerned at this point that AA is going to start breaking off into factions, which brings us to tradition one. Our common welfare should come first. Personal recovery depends upon AA unity. If AA were ever to fragment and separate, I mean, I'm a dead man. And you know, we really saw a test of this during COVID. I was really quite concerned when COVID first hit. I mean, it looked as though they were going to shut down our meetings and we were going to get divided. And you know, as God would have it, I think we're more connected. If you look at this meeting right now, I would say we're more connected than we've ever been. Right? We got people from Thailand. We've got people from from all over the United States. We've got people from the UK here, man. We are connected in our fellowship right now. But so this is what Bill Wilson started to see happening. And this is when he found out about the Washingtonians. Okay. Bill had never heard about the Washingtonians before. And somebody wrote Bill a letter and indicated to him, have you heard about the Washingtonians, Bill? They were a prohibition group, a group of, non-drinking group that grew in incredible leaps and bounds, thousands and thousands of people involved in this group. And because they got fragmented and because they got divided into other areas of society and other controversies, and they started to get opinions on other issues, they fragmented and they got ripped apart. And this is where Bill Wilson could see the need to build this structure around these traditions, these 12 traditions. And in a way, guys, I think that the 12 traditions are in a way even more spiritually inspired than the 12 steps, because the 12 steps, if you think about it, we really got the 12 steps from the Oxford group, right? Like it's a kind of a well-formed religious ethic that we had already been given by the Oxford group, right? Surrender, confession, restitution, and service. We got that. Bill formed that into the 12 steps pretty easy, but the 12 traditions are something absolutely unique to Alcoholics Anonymous. You will not find these traditions anywhere else in the world. And we really developed these out of hard lessons learned and really a lot of spiritual, I think, and divine inspiration. One of the things that I want to talk about in terms of tradition 12, my understanding, of anonymity. What does anonymity mean? How can anonymity be a spiritual thing? How can it be the spiritual foundation of all our traditions? How can me being afraid of you knowing what my last name is, how can that be a spiritual foundation of all our traditions? What does that mean when we talk about anonymity? And they talk about it here. They talk about, we learned we had to be anonymous because we couldn't respond with enough letters to get back to people and so on and so forth. And I just want to say, and I feel like I want to share with you guys today, my understanding of anonymity today is not that I don't want you to know who I am. What it means is that who I am is not important. I am not the miracle. Alcoholics Anonymous is the miracle. Okay. And we give all of the grace and all of the glory that we have to Alcoholics Anonymous. And Alcoholics Anonymous is what is vital and important. It's not about me. It's not about who I am. Who I am is not important. The 12 steps in Alcoholics Anonymous, that's what's important. And that's what deserves all the credit. And that's my understanding of anonymity being the spiritual foundation of all these traditions, ever reminding us to place principles vis-a-vis the 12 steps before personalities vis-a-vis Kevin Olson. Okay, that's all I wanted to share, Summer. Thank you.
Beautiful, Kevin. Thank you so much. Covered it well. All right, we're going to continue on the bottom of XIX. While the internal difficulties of our adolescent period were being ironed out, public acceptance of AA grew by leaps and bounds. For this, there were two principal reasons: the large number of recoveries and reunited homes. These made their impressions everywhere. Of alcoholics who came to AA and really tried, 50% got sober at once and remained that way. 25% sobered up after some relapses, and among the remainder, those who stayed on with AA showed improvements. Other thousands came to a few AA meetings and at first decided they didn't want the program. But great numbers of these, about 2 out of 3, began to return as time passed. Do you have anything to comment on that, Kevin?
Yes, 100%. Certainly I do. Sorry, I was looking for something in the back of the book that corroborates these numbers. So this is something that was really enforced within me about the vitality of practicing the program of Alcoholics Anonymous as it was in 1939 when this book was written. Okay. Alcoholics Anonymous is founded June 10th, 1935. Bill and Bob stay sober They get sober alcoholic number 3, Bill Dotson. They continue working with many alcoholics. Bill goes back to New York. They start developing AA in New York. Then there became AA in Cleveland. And around 1937, they decided, you know what, we need to write a book about what we've been doing. And 1939, the book is published, of course. And the record, or rather the rates of recovery of people who came to AA at that time, 1935 to 1940, when there was nothing else to do other than the 12 steps and this book and nothing else, the number of people who got sober at once was 50%. And of those, of the remainder, 25% sobered up after some relapses. So we're talking about a 75% recovery rate when I work Alcoholics Anonymous the way it was between 1935 and 1940. I like to say that I'm a 1935 to 1940 member of Alcoholics Anonymous. This is how I do it, and this is how I work it with my sponsees. You come to my home group, this is what you're going to find. You're going to find a way, an ethic of Alcoholics Anonymous similar to 1935 to 1940 type of AA. Today, when we talk about what are recovery rates in AA worldwide, I mean, you're going to hear all different kinds of percentages, but most of them are single-digit percentages, unfortunately. Okay, like less than 10% of the people that come to AA stay sober and remain sober. And that's unfortunate. And I think that's because we in AA have gotten away from the practice of what's in the big book. We go to a lot of meetings and we talk about a lot of fellowship. And don't get me wrong, I'm not a hater on fellowship, man. I love fellowship. But an alcoholic of my type cannot stay sober on fellowship alone. Okay, I might be able to stay sober on fellowship for a small period of time, but eventually something is going to happen. Either something bad is going to happen or something really good is going to happen. Okay, and I'm going to find myself in trouble. And anything short of a spiritual awakening is the result of the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I am doomed to die an alcoholic death. That is the straight goods. Okay. And when I'm living my life on meeting-based sobriety, just going to meetings, 90 meetings, 90 days, or we'll refund your misery, don't drink and go to meetings, even if your butt falls off, all this type of stuff, that is not a message of depth and weight. That is not a spiritual message. A spiritual message is that God conquers alcoholism, and anyone who will attempt and do the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous can connect to God and overcome that problem. And when Alcoholics Anonymous was founded on those steps and working those steps and getting connected to God and nothing else, 50% of people got sober right away and remained that way. 75% over time stayed sober. So when we work Alcoholics Anonymous the way it was in 1935 to 1940, when this book was written, we too can again start to experience this 50% recovery rate. And I'm quite pleased to tell you, and I'm not saying this because I am any type of a special sponsor, but of the guys that I sponsor, about 50% of the guys that I sponsor stay sober. And about 75% of the guys in general, 25 might come back after some relapse. Okay. But almost, and it's something that I talk about in sobriety. If I have 2 brand newcomers come and ask me to sponsor them at the same time, I'll take them both on, because odds are 50% are going to stay sober. Okay. And that's because when I take guys through the steps, it is exactly as I've been taught by Joe and Charlie and many that came before them, to go through the book in a very methodical way and to take them through the steps, and to take them through the steps rapidly. Okay, to help them have a spiritual awakening that can overcome their problem. And somewhere I was just looking for, there's a quote here in the back that corroborates that 50%. Oh yeah, okay, if you go to page 569, I just found this the other day because I was talking to someone who's a medical doctor, and I wanted them to read this medical view on AA. And I just thought this is interesting because it corroborates these percentages. So if you go to page 569, it says, Dr. G. Kirby Collier, psychiatrist, I felt that AA is a group unto themselves, and the best results can be had under their own guidance as a result of their philosophy. Any therapeutic or philosophic procedure which can prove a recovery rate of 50 to 60% must merit our consideration. So I just found that the other day, and I thought it was really interesting that it really pairs up perfectly with that assertion that in the early days of AA, 1935 to 1940, we had a 50% recovery rate when we worked Alcoholics Anonymous, just the way it is in the big book, as opposed to trying to stay sober on fellowship and mating-based sobriety.
Awesome. Thank you, Kevin. Great. Also with, Dr. Silkworth, who will later be introduced to in the doctor's opinion, coming up soon. He worked with 40,000 alcoholics, and he didn't have, he knew the problem, but he didn't know the full solution, right? So without that full solution, what Kevin just explained, the percentages were, I think, I have written down 2%, a 2% recovery rate from Dr. Silkworth. Is that correct, Kevin?
Yeah, I'll say anytime, our book is pretty clear that self-knowledge avails us really nothing. And really when we learn, what Dr. Silkworth has to teach us about the cycle of alcoholism, a lot of times what will happen is guys will say like, oh man, I understand, like you talked to me about, the physical allergy, the mental obsession, man, I get that. I totally understand that. And guys think they understand that and that they've discovered a solution. And that is not a solution. That is a problem. That's all that we've learned. We have not learned the solution. And most importantly, we haven't learned the program of action that we need to do in order to achieve that solution. So yeah, single digit percentages for sure. But here's what I want to say. I want to say one more thing about this, guys. Okay, what are the real recovery rates in Alcoholics Anonymous? The real recovery rates in Alcoholics Anonymous, make no mistake, the real recovery rates in AA are 100%. Okay, we have a 100% success rate in Alcoholics Anonymous. For anyone who will do this work, I promise you a 100% success rate, because our program is based on God, and God is infallible. Okay, if God is fallible, he's not God by definition. Okay, God is infallible, and if I will do this work and I get connected to this solution, God is infallible, and the recovery rates in AA are 100%. God will not let us down. Just to the extent that I make an effort to get connected to him, will he make an effort to restore me and provide me with what I need. I love this saying, and I think it's very true. When I drink water, I don't have to tell the water where to go in my body. Okay, my body knows where the water needs to go. And it's the same thing with God. All I need to do is get God into me, and God knows where I need to be healed. Okay, and the recovery rates in AA are 100%. I believe that to the depth of my soul.
Awesome. Thank you, Kevin. All right, another reason, back to the book, we're on XX. For anyone who just came in, we're on XX in the forward to the second edition. Another reason for the wide acceptance of AA was the ministration of friends in medicine, religion, and the press, together with innumerable others who became our able and persistent advocates. Without such support, AA could have made only the slowest progress. Some of the recommendations of AA's early medical and religious friends will be found further on in this book. Alcoholics Anonymous is not a religious organization. Neither does AA take any particular medical point of view, though we cooperate widely with the men of medicine as well as the men of religion. Alcohol being no respecter of persons, we are an accurate cross-section of America, and in distant lands, the same democratic evening up process is now going on. By personal religious affiliation, we include Catholics, Protestants, Jews, Hindus, and a sprinkling of Muslims and Buddhists. More than 15% of us are women. At present, our membership is pyramiding at the rate of about 20% a year. So far, upon the total problem of several million actual and potential alcoholics in the world, we have made only a scratch. In all probability, we shall never be able to touch more than a fair fraction of the alcohol problem in all its ramifications. Upon therapy for the alcoholic himself, we surely have no monopoly. Yet it is our great hope that all those who have as yet found no answer may begin to find one in the pages of this book, and will presently join us on the high road to a new freedom. All right, Kevin.
So, Summer, is there anything that you want to say about what we just read?
Well, yes, actually there is, but you know, I love the last line that presently join us on the high road to a new freedom. I mean, this is a new, like, the high road, and like together we can have a brand new freedom, like you were talking about, with this spiritual entity added on to the knowing the problem, and you know, working the program, doing all three aspects of AA, we can have a new freedom. I mean, this is a promise, because it says it right here, on the high road to a new freedom. And it's not this, I mean, we're alcoholics, so we have a whole different way of having, you know, if we're the real deal alcoholic, we have to do this work. We have to do this work. We have to pick up the spiritual tools that have been laid down at our feet. When we come to that jumping off point, we have to choose that. We can't have a middle of the road solution. And so that's really all I had to say. If you have anything to say.
I do. If you will, you guys indulge me getting up on a little bit of a soapbox for a little bit?
Yes.
Yeah. Just a little bit. Just forgive me. Just for a couple moments. Okay. Diego likes the soapbox. All right. Okay. So here's the deal, right? Like it says here, and this was written in 1955, the forward to the second edition. Okay. And it talks about at this point. Well, so one of the things I like to point out, I don't know if this had been pointed out beforehand, but at this point, 300,000 copies of the Big Book have gone out. Okay. And there are now 150,000 sober members of Alcoholics Anonymous. Okay. So that means for every big book that went out, for every 2 big books that went out, 1 alcoholic got sober. Okay. And at this point, there was nothing else in Alcoholics Anonymous to do other than get a book, get a sponsor, go through the steps, and then carry this message to someone else. And when that was the only message in Alcoholics Anonymous, again, 50% of people got sober. 300,000 books go out, 150,000 people get sober. So this was written in 1955. What happens in 1956? In 1956, alcoholism is accepted as an official disease by the American Medical Association. And this is something that AA really wanted. We thought that this was a great idea. And this was going to be very beneficial for our society. Okay. And in fact, I believe what happened is it kind of boomeranged on us. Okay. And I'll tell you what I mean and why I think that. Once alcoholism is accepted as a medical illness by the American Medical Association, then doctors started to get involved. And then psychiatrists started to get involved. Not far after that, behind that, insurance companies start to get involved. Okay. And corporations start to get involved. And now there's money involved in the treatment of alcoholism. And now people who are going to work and having drinking problems have to, for insurance purposes, be sent to, and then we start to see treatment centers start to get developed. Now, don't get me wrong. I myself am a product of a treatment center. But for a long time in the 60s and 70s, okay, treatment centers were a lot different than they are now. They were not 12-step based treatment centers. And we still have treatment centers all over the place that are, you know, I went to some treatment centers that were like, you know, sobriety through volleyball and better living through video games. And, you know, I remember one place where I went and we had this little feelings chart, and every day you would get up with your little marble and talk about your feelings and you put it on the feelings chart. And I could never really figure out like where to put my marble, because they didn't have homicidal or suicidal on the feelings chart. But that's pretty much the 2 feelings that I had while I was in there. And what happens is a lot of people go to these treatment centers and there's all this money involved, and there's all these psychiatrists and different doctors and different therapists involved in these different treatment centers and this different treatment apparatus. And what happens in the 1960s and 70s is we start to see these people coming out of treatment, and then the treatment centers wanted to have as part of their aftercare program that they should also go to meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. Also around this time, in about 1962, the grapevine, again, in a seemingly positive step, comes up with the idea of the 3-topic discussion meeting. Okay, now I'm not sure if you guys have 3-topic discussion meetings where you live, but in my group is a little pocket of enthusiasm surrounded by 3-topic disgusting meetings. Okay, and they're the kind. Oh, sorry, did I say disgusting?
Yeah.
I meant discussion. Sorry, I meant discussion. Where are you going? It's like, what are the 3 topics? Topic number 1, importance of meetings. Number 2, relapse prevention. Number 3, gratitude, or checking in, or where we're from. And what happens is Alcoholics Anonymous, the meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous become like meetings that I grew up in, man. Unfortunately, kind of a de facto pop psychology, group therapy, watered down version of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'll tell you what, brothers and sisters, I did not like it when people watered down my drinks. Why? Because it doesn't have the same effect. And I will tell you that watered down AA did not have the same effect for me either. Okay. And so I revolt at the idea of watered down Alcoholics Anonymous, but this is what starts to happen. Okay. In Alcoholics Anonymous around the world, 1960s, 1970s, people start coming out of the treatment centers. They start coming to AA. We have this idea of the 3-topic discussion meeting, and we see what we see today in a lot of places in the world, where AA has just become some kind of group therapy. And I thought, well, the purpose of AA, I go to a meeting and I talk about my problems. I take my little bag of problems and I leave it in the meeting, and somehow I'm supposed to feel better cathartically from doing that. And I didn't. I was physically sober and I was mentally nuts, and I would leave that meeting and I would go home and I would want to commit suicide again, because sooner or later it's 3 o'clock in the morning and I'm all by myself again, and I would drink. Rather than commit suicide, I would drink. So this is what we see happening. And so when it talks here about, you know, our fellowship is growing at a rate of what does it say here? We're pyramiding at about 20% per year. What you see in the 1980s until about now is that stops completely. We stopped growing in the middle 1980s. We hit about 2 million members worldwide in the 1980s. And our best estimates are that we're at about 2 million members worldwide right now. And we have plateaued at that 2 million right across the board, all around the world. Okay. And I think that it's because we got away from the very thing that helped us to grow in the first place, which is God. Getting connected to God as the result of the 12 steps, and then taking that message to another alcoholic. What we do now, instead of thinking about meetings as a place where I go to give something and to help someone, now we hear people say, I really need a meeting. I need to go to a meeting. What do I need to do? My self-centered self needs to go and talk about myself in my AA meeting, instead of going to help and continue to grow Alcoholics Anonymous. And anyway, that's my soapbox. That's what I wanted to share. I think that's why we started to plateau in the 1980s. We have not seen this substantial growth. And I'm so pleased to be a part of a little pocket of international worldwide enthusiasm here at the Big Book Compendium, where we are beginning to hopefully turn the tide. Can you repeat the 3 disgusting topics? You want me to repeat the importance of meetings? I think, what did I joke about? The importance of meetings, relapse prevention, checking and gratitude. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And gratitude. Well, whatever. And you know, those are fine topics, but they're not a substitute for me actually going through the 12 steps. You know, and you know why I think we just say to newcomers these days, or just 90 meetings, 90 days, we'll refund your misery. You know why? Because it's time consuming to sit with a sponsee and take him through this work. It takes time, it takes effort, it takes a lot of work. It's a lot easier to just say, well, I've got to go. I've got my busy life that I came and I shoplifted my sobriety from AA is really what I did. Now I've got this great, fantastic life, but I'm not going to give any of it back to AA. Okay, so newcomers, just 90 meetings, 90 days, and I wish you all the best of luck. Okay, and then the reality is what we ought to do if we want to continue growing is we ought to continue carrying this message to others and growing a fellowship. You know, we've got a pocket of enthusiasm. My friend Martin Eyre in Hamilton, Ontario likes to say we need pockets of resistance is what we need. We need pockets of resistance against people who are trying to water down Alcoholics Anonymous. You guys with me on that?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Very good. Thank you, guys. Thank you for allowing me and indulging me some time on the soapbox.
Thank you, Kevin. That's all we needed to hear that. Okay, so we're gonna move on to, since I have you here, Kevin, we're gonna move straight into doctor's opinion. I'm gonna read a little bit. We're gonna go, unless you have anything to comment real quick on the third or fourth edition. Forward to the third or fourth edition. We were gonna plan on moving straight to the doctor's opinion.
Hey, the only thing I would say about the forward to the fourth edition is the very last line, where it talks about the advancements of technology. So here in the forward to the fourth edition, it says modem to modem or face to face AA speak the language of the heart and all its power and simplicity. In February of 2020, if you would have told me that I was going to be part of an online Zoom meeting where I was going to be talking the big book to people around the world, I would have told you were out of your mind. And if you would have told me that I was going to be a sponsor that has received and listened to Fifth Steps virtually, I would have told you that you were crazy. And COVID, of course, thank God for Zoom. I know we have no opinion on outside issues or no affiliation with outside organizations, but can I just say thank God for Zoom? Thank God for Zoom and what it's done for Alcoholics Anonymous through COVID. So modem to modem, face to face, or Zoom to Zoom, brothers and sisters, Zoom to Zoom. I have discovered it is equally just as effective. I can take sponsees through step 1, step 2, step 3, help them with step 4 around the world. And what an absolute, keep logging on. Yeah, man. What an absolute pleasure. Like literally to be here. I've got people from Florida, people from California, people from Delray Beach, people from all over the world, man, all over the world. And what a cool thing. So that's the only part I think that we likely in the fifth edition, they may say something about the pandemic and what happened with Zoom. I hope that they do. Modem to modem, face to face, or Zoom to Zoom. We AA speak the language with the heart in all its power and simplicity. That's the only thing I wanted to say. Now I'm all in for the doctor's opinion. Let's do it.
Okay. All right. And I love that you said that about the language of the heart because the language of the heart is universal. Like we can go anywhere at any time with that language of the heart. And like that's how Bob and Bill met. Anyways. Okay. So the doctor's opinion. We are on XXV. You just let me know if you need me to stop before I stop. We of Alcoholics Anonymous believe that the reader will be interested in the medical estimate of the plan of recovery described in this book. Convincing testimony must surely come from medical men who have had experience with the sufferings of our members and have witnessed our return to health. A well-known doctor, chief physician at a nationally prominent hospital specializing in alcoholic and drug addiction, gave Alcoholics Anonymous this letter. So the well-known doctor is Dr. Silkworth, and it's at Towns Hospital.
I didn't know we were doing the doctor's opinion. I put on my Dr. Silkworth shirt.
Oh, okay. All right.
That's Dr. Silkworth right there. That's my Dr. Silkworth shirt, man.
He looks like a mad scientist.
Silky. That's our man, Silky. One of the most influential contributors to Alcoholics Anonymous by far. Dr. Silkworth gives us the problem. There are 3 things that every alcoholic needs to know in order to achieve recovery in Alcoholics Anonymous. I need to know what the problem is. I need to know what the solution is. And I need a program of action that I can take to achieve that solution to overcome the problem. And Dr. Silkworth gives us the problem. And he gets that from, Summer alluded to, he worked with over 40,000 alcoholics. Okay. And he would see 2 different things in this hospital. Okay. So Dr. Silkworth had been a brain surgeon. He was a neurosurgeon. And in the Great Depression in the 1930s, he lost his job, like many people did. And he was approached by a colleague of his by the name of Charlie Towns, who had started a hospital for rehabilitation of alcoholics and drug addicts called the Towns Hospital in New York City. And he asked Dr. Silkworth, who had a passion, he felt a calling for alcoholics to come and work at this hospital. If you think, well, sure, he's a doctor, he was probably getting rich off it. I have looked it up. He made, if you correct for inflation, he was making the equivalent to $12,000 a year. Like in today's money, he was making $12,000 a year as a doctor working at the town's hospital. So there was definitely an altruistic aspect to what he was doing. But what I always like to say is that he saw two things. He saw 9 out of 10 people come to the hospital and say the alcoholic national anthem, those magic words, "I'm never going to drink again." And about 9 out of every 10 of those would come to the hospital and they would sober up and they would leave the hospital and they would never return. And then he saw guys like me. He saw guys like our friend, our co-founder, Bill Wilson. Bill Wilson attends and is treated at the town's hospital 3 times in 1934. He went in March, he went in July, and then he came again in November. December 11th, 1934, he turns back into the town's hospital 3 times. And each time he comes back, Dr. Silkworth is baffled. "Wilson, what happened? Can you not see what the problem is? Can you not see that you're dying? Can you not see that you're hurting everyone around you? Can you not see how much trouble you're in?" And Dr. Silkworth began to develop a theory as a result of this data, of looking at these guys coming back, these 1 out of every 10 guys who came back, and he could see this is not a drinking problem. This is not just heavy drinking. This is a disease separate from that thing, a disease that we call alcoholism. And alcoholism is a disease that is characterized spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and physically. Alcoholism is a disease that begins, you might say, when I stop drinking. And alcohol is not the problem. Alcohol is what I use to treat the problem. The problem is that when I get sober, I become restless, irritable, and discontent. We call that the spiritual malady, and I'm going to let Dr. Silkworth explain this for us in this chapter.
All right. Back to the book at XXV. To whom it may concern, I have specialized in the treatment of alcoholism for many years. In late 1934, I attended a patient who, though he had been a competent businessman of good earning capacity, was an alcoholic of a type I had come to regard as hopeless.
Okay, so they keep it kind of anonymous here, but let it be no mistake. He's talking about Bill Wilson. That is who he's talking about here, okay? And in the next paragraph, he's going to talk about kind of what happened to Bill Wilson that was different during his 3rd treatment. And incidentally, this thing that happened did not happen through Dr. Silkworth. And thank God Dr. Silkworth had the humility to be able to identify that there was something else going on with this man.
In the course of his 3rd treatment, he acquired certain ideas concerning a possible means of recovery. As part of his rehabilitation, he commenced to present his conception to other alcoholics, impressing upon them that they must do likewise with still others. This has become the basis of a rapidly growing fellowship of these men and their families. This man and over 100 others appear to have recovered.
Okay, so December 11th, 1934, Bill Wilson returns to the town's hospital. He gets sober. Ebby Thatcher, his old school friend, comes. Now, we all know the story in Bill's story where Ebby comes and talks to him in the kitchen and lays out the program of recovery. We all think that he gets sober from then on. That's not the case. Ebby comes to see him in the middle of November. Bill continues to drink after that. December 11th, he goes to the town's hospital. Around December 16th, Ebby Thatcher comes and again takes Bill Wilson through the 12 steps. Okay. December 18th, Bill Wilson has his white light spiritual experience and leaves the town's hospital. Okay. So what Dr. Silkworth is saying here is that during his 3rd treatment, he acquired certain ideas about a possible means of recovery. How did he acquire those? He acquired those because Ebby Thatcher came and gave it to him. Then it says, as part of his rehabilitation, he commenced to present his conceptions to other alcoholics. He kept carrying the message. You know, and as my friend Bill Cleveland says, you know, we have a saying, you got to give it away to keep it, right? We've all heard that before. We've got to give it away to keep it. That's not true. We have to give it away to get it at all. If we're not giving it away, we're not getting it. Okay. And this is what Bill Wilson is realizing here, that in order for him to stay well already at this in the infancy of Alcoholics Anonymous, Bill Wilson knows that he has to give this thing away, impressing upon them that they may still do likewise with others. And then by 1939, by the time Dr. Silkworth is writing this, 100 men and their families have appeared to recover.
And Kevin, and I think that undoubtedly it has to be, you know, some sort of act of a higher power, God, as I call it, because I mean, think about Bill sitting in when he was in the hospital and he had only had a, you know, very short amount of time. And one of the first intuitive thoughts that came to him was like, how can I go help others? I mean, that's not how I was. At that time, like going through detox and all of that. And, you know, he wanted to help others laying in a hospital bed.
It absolutely was divine inspiration. Absolutely. Bill had this white light spiritual experience that we can read about in Bill's story. And he always connected that white light spiritual experience to a desire for him to help other alcoholics the way he had been helped. And he felt his whole life that he had a very special, unique calling to do this. And certainly there was a divine inspiration for him. And thank God that there was, because that carried the day over the many, many years and decades of hard sledding through the growth and the infancy in the early days of Alcoholics Anonymous. We think that it must have been glamorous. Believe me, it was not glamorous for Bill. There were a lot of very, very hard days. He did not make a lot of money. He certainly did not get rich. He was on the borderline of poverty the majority of his life. Certainly spiritually wealthy, I would like to think. But thank God for that inspiration that he had, that divine inspiration.
Thank you, Kevin. All right. I personally know scores of cases who were of the type with whom other methods had failed completely. These facts appear to be of extreme medical importance because of the extraordinary possibilities of rapid growth inherent in this group. They may mark a new epoch in the annals of alcoholism. These men may well have a remedy for thousands of such situations. You may rely absolutely on anything they say about themselves. Very truly yours, William D. Silkworth.
Okay, so we got just a couple minutes to go, right?
Yes.
Summer. So I'll just share a couple things. You know, I used to read this book when I was new, and I would read something like a new epoch in the annals of alcoholism, and I would just get frustrated because I didn't know what that meant. An epoch is just a period of time. Like, think of it as an era or a period of time. And what you could think about is that we have been, as long as man has been crushing grapes, as long as there has been alcohol, there has been alcoholism. And people have had problems with drinking since the beginning of time. Where do you think prohibition came from? Think about that. Prohibition era in the United States. Think about how bad of a problem alcohol must have been in order for them to amend the Constitution of the United States to abolish drinking. Okay, that happened before AA. So drinking was a problem. And if you think about a library full of books, full of remedies, full of different solutions for alcoholism and ways that men can stop drinking, the Washingtonians that I was referring to earlier would be one epoch in the annals of alcoholism. And annals are really just library stacks. Think of them as library stacks, okay? So what they're saying is there's a new era. In all the library stacks of all the things that anyone has ever tried to do to stop drinking, there's a new era. There's a new shelf of books that we may have here for Alcoholics Anonymous. And there are a bunch of lines in the book that I use as a baseline for myself as a member of AA that I like to ask myself. And this is really one of the first ones. It says, you may rely absolutely on anything they say about themselves. This is what Bill Wilson's doctor, Dr. Silkworth, is saying about Bill Wilson, that you may rely on anything Bill Wilson says about himself. What I like to wonder is if you went and talked to Dr. Collins, my doctor, Would Dr. Collins say the same thing about me? What he knows about me as a man, what he knows about me as a human being, would he say that Kevin Olson is the type of person you can rely on anything Kevin Olson says about himself? That's a benchmark that I like to ask myself, because that's what Dr. Silkworth was saying about the first 100 members of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I like to ask myself, am I the type of person that you can rely on anything I say about myself? I aspire to be that person, okay? And lastly, what I want to say is in the first edition, and most of you historians will know this, but I'll share it anyway. It did not say very truly yours, William D. Silkworth, MD. It said very truly yours, XXMD. Okay, well, why? Well, it's because Dr. Silkworth had this opinion. He had this theory about what he saw, but he couldn't prove it. Okay, that's why it's not called the doctor's prescription or the doctor's factual evidence. It's called the doctor's opinion. Okay, now if you fast forward to today, we know that what Dr. Silkworth was inferring from what he saw is absolute medical fact. Okay, alcoholics process alcohol in a different way than normal people. This is medical fact. Okay, but at that time he was very, very shy. He said, guys, if you put my name in it, I'm going to get drummed out of the medical profession. I'll write the letter for you because I believe in what you guys are doing, but I can't speak to this spiritual stuff and I can't speak at a medical level about what I'm talking about. So please don't write my name in it. Okay. Then if you fast forward to the second edition, alcoholism had been accepted by the American Psychiatric Association, the American Medical Association, the American Pharmacological Association, and on and on. Now, Dr. Silkworth said, okay, now, guys, now you can put my name in it. Put my name in it now. That'll be just fine. Okay. And I just mentioned that because we're dealing with human beings, human beings that have human flaws and human frailties. And anyway, that's a little bit of additional history about Alcoholics Anonymous.
Thank you, Kevin. Do you have anything else to comment on the doctor's opinion so far? But we are going to stop. But if you have anything else, any closing thoughts?
No, other than, guys, I'm not sure who's going to be doing it next week for you guys, but make sure page XXVIII is where the cycle of alcoholism exists. And we talk about the cycle of alcoholism in great detail. I don't have it with me right now. I might have it on my computer. We talk about the cycle of alcoholism in great detail at my big book study. I think it's an essential part of what we understand. At the bottom of the page XXVIII, where it says men and women drink. Men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. That's where the cycle starts. Here, I'm going to pull this over and I'm just going to share this with you guys very quickly. And you might want to take a screenshot of this.
Okay.
And bring it with you next week. So this is the cycle of alcoholism. We become restless, irritable, and discontent unless we can again experience a sense of ease and comfort that comes at once by taking a few drinks. Drinks we see others taking with impunity. The alcoholic, though, can after a time no longer distinguish the true from the false. We have an insane thought that tells us it's going to be okay to pick up a drink. We trigger the physical allergy or the craving for alcohol, which is something new and novel that Dr. Silkworth gives us. We enter the well-known stages of a spree, emerging remorseful with a firm resolution not to drink again. And this is repeated over and over. And unless this person can experience an entire psychic change, also known as a spiritual awakening, there is very little hope of his recovery. So for sure, this is the key part. This is for me, this is the key part of the doctor's opinion. This is what I take sponsees through. I just did it today. I have sponsees come up with 5 stories from their own life that match the cycle, and we take them through this story. So take a screenshot if you like, or let me know. I'd be happy to text it to you or send it to you. Other than that, we're already 5 minutes over. So thank you very much for having me, Summer. It's always a pleasure to be part of anything the Big Book Compendium is doing.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Great job. All right. And next week we will continue on. We will have Nadia here with us. I'm trying to figure out how to stop this recording. I don't have the option for some reason. Hold on. Okay, here we go.